Sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones who sound the calmest. In this session, we'll learn how to see through the charm and spot manipulation before it takes hold. They smile, they listen, they make you feel seen. But behind it all, there's a hidden motive. What if the person you trust the most is shaping your decisions without you even realizing it? That's the quiet truth about manipulation. It doesn't always look like control. It's not always shouting, threats, or obvious deceit. Sometimes it's gentle. Sometimes it's wrapped in kindness. The illusion of control makes us believe we're the ones choosing, when in reality, someone else might be guiding our thoughts, nudging our emotions, or planting ideas that feel like our own. And here's the thing. Not every manipulator is cruel. Some do it out of fear. Some do it because it's the only way they have learned to feel safe or important. But no matter the reason, the effect is the same. Your sense of agency slowly fades. You start doubting your instincts. You second-guess your memory, and one day, you wake up wondering how you got so far from what you wanted. In this session, we're going to pull back that curtain, gently, calmly, and understand how this illusion works. Because once you can see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And that awareness is where your control truly begins. The mirror effect. Mirroring and emotional bonding. They say the easiest way to make someone like you is to be like them. It sounds innocent, right? A natural form of connection. But in the hands of a manipulator, it becomes one of the most disarming psychological tools. The mirror effect. Think about it. You meet someone new, and instantly they seem familiar. They nod when you nod. They pause when you pause. They laugh at the same things, like the same music, even tell stories that reflect your own. You think, finally, someone who understands me. And maybe they do. Or maybe they've simply learned how to become your reflection. Humans are wired to trust similarity. Our brains light up when we find resonance, a shared opinion, a mirrored gesture, a matching tone. Psychologists call it emotional synchronization, driven by the subtle firing of mirror neurons. When we see someone behaving like us, we subconsciously feel safer. We let our guard down. We believe, if they're like me, they must be good. That's the illusion manipulators exploit. They study your rhythm, your vocabulary, even the way you breathe. They echo your emotions, creating a false sense of intimacy. A closeness that feels earned, but is in fact engineered. It's not empathy, it's imitation, not connection, but calibration. The danger lies in how invisible it feels. Mirroring happens beneath awareness. You don't notice the alignment, only the comfort. You begin to feel seen, understood, validated, and slowly the bond deepens. They become your safe space. You tell them things you don't tell others. You defend them when someone doubts them. Because now, you believe this closeness is real. But there's a subtle test you can use. A way to tell authenticity from performance. Real empathy has texture. It doesn't always agree. It doesn't always flatter. Someone who truly understands you will sometimes challenge you, gently, out of care. But a manipulator won't risk disagreement. They need your approval too much. So they'll stay within the boundaries of what keeps you comfortable, until comfort becomes dependence. It's also in the timing. Genuine connection grows. It unfolds. Mirroring, on the other hand, happens too quickly. You meet them, and suddenly they just get you. They tell you they've never felt this kind of understanding before. That should make you pause, not because connection can't be instant, but because real trust doesn't demand speed. Manipulators build their mirror slowly at first, testing what earns your reaction. Maybe they mirror your tone when you're calm, your posture when you're open. Then they deepen it, matching your language, your values, even your frustrations. You start feeling like you've met your emotional twin. And that's the moment they gain access, not just to your attention, but to your emotional core. When you're mirrored long enough, your brain starts linking familiarity with safety. That's when influence begins. They can suggest things, and you'll consider them more seriously, because it feels like the suggestion comes from someone who truly gets you. That's how small compromises begin. You say yes when you would have said no. You agree to things that feel just slightly off. Here's something important to remember. Mirroring isn't always malicious. It's a part of natural human connection. Friends do it, partners do it, even strangers do it unconsciously when they like each other. But the difference is intention. Real mirroring comes from empathy, a desire to connect. Manipulative mirroring comes from strategy, a desire to control. So, how can you tell? Pay attention to consistency. When someone only mirrors your positive sides, your strengths, your moods, but disappears emotionally when you're off balance, that's a sign. Real closeness survives discomfort. Artificial bonding vanishes the moment you stop being convenient. And when you begin to recognize these patterns, something powerful happens. The illusion breaks. You start seeing the gaps, the subtle shifts when their mirroring falters, the tension when you no longer play the role they've built their reflection around. They might grow distant, cold, or defensive. Because once the mirror cracks, the manipulator loses control. So, the next time someone feels too familiar too soon, step back, breathe, ask yourself, do they reflect me or do they understand me? It's a small distinction, but it can make all the difference between being known and being used. When we return, we'll look at the next layer. What happens after the mirror is built? How emotional attachment turns into silent obedience? And why the people who seem most harmless can shape your world without ever raising their voice. Gaslighting. The distortion of reality. They make you question what really happened, not by yelling, not by blaming, but by calmly suggesting that you're mistaken, that maybe you misunderstood, that maybe, just maybe, you're the problem. And the worst part? You start to believe them. Gaslighting is one of the most insidious forms of manipulation because it doesn't attack your body. It attacks your perception. It doesn't need force to control you. It only needs confusion. The goal isn't to make you afraid of someone else. It's to make you afraid of your own mind. It begins subtly. A word here, a correction there. You bring up something they said yesterday, and they smile gently. I never said that. You recall an event vividly, but they shake their head. That's not how it happened. At first, you laugh it off. You assume maybe you misheard, maybe you're tired, but over time, their calm certainty starts to outweigh your fragile memory. Your brain, seeking social stability, starts prioritizing their version of events over your own. And that's the moment they gain control, not over what you do, but over what you believe. Gaslighting works because humans crave coherence. When two people have conflicting memories, one has to yield for peace to return. The manipulator knows this. They create just enough doubt, just enough distortion, that you choose harmony over truth. You apologize even when you're right. You agree to things that make you uneasy because arguing feels pointless. You stop trusting your instincts. Over time, this erosion of certainty rewires your brain. You start pre-editing your emotions, questioning your reactions before expressing them. You ask, am I overreacting? Am I remembering wrong? Am I the problem? The manipulator doesn't need to silence you. You silence yourself. What makes gaslighting so dangerous is that it hides beneath reasonableness. It doesn't always look like cruelty. In fact, it often wears the mask of patience. The manipulator will say things like, you're too emotional, or you always take things the wrong way, or you're remembering it differently. They'll do it softly, with a smile, with a tone that makes you feel childish for disagreeing. It's a slow psychological bleed, not an explosion. The power dynamic shifts invisibly. They position themselves as the rational one, the calm one, the objective observer, and you, the one who questions, who feels deeply, become the irrational one. This shift is key. Once you accept that narrative, they no longer need to control you directly. You'll correct yourself before they ever have to. Psychologically, gaslighting thrives on cognitive dissonance, the mental tension that arises when reality doesn't match your experience. To relieve the discomfort, your brain chooses the simpler path, accepting their version of truth, especially if you love them, respect them, or rely on them. Because our minds are wired to preserve relationships, even at the cost of our sanity. It's not just emotional, it's neurological. Studies in social cognition show that repeated invalidation literally weakens neural confidence in one's own memories. The hippocampus, which stores contextual memory, becomes overridden by the amygdala's emotional distress. In plain terms, your emotional pain starts rewriting your facts. The manipulator doesn't need to tell you you're crazy. Your own brain starts whispering it for them. Gaslighting can happen anywhere, in relationships, friendships, workplaces, even families. A parent might say, "I never said that. You always exaggerate." A partner might insist, "You're imagining things. I was just talking to a friend." A boss might say, "You must have misunderstood the instructions." Each instance feels small, harmless, until one day, you can't tell what's real anymore. The most terrifying part is how victims begin defending their abusers. Because gaslighting isn't just confusion, it's conditioning. You start depending on the manipulator for a sense of clarity. They become your emotional compass, even though they're the one spinning it. You go to them to confirm your own reality. You ask them if what you're feeling is okay. That's not love. That's captivity disguised as comfort. But here's the truth. Reality doesn't vanish because someone denies it. It doesn't disappear just because they say it's wrong. Reality remains, hidden beneath the fog they create, waiting for you to rediscover it. The first step to breaking free is recognizing the pattern. Notice how they react when you assert your memory. Do they engage, or do they deflect, mock, or trivialize? Do they ever take responsibility? True accountability strengthens trust. Gaslighting erodes it. Another red flag is emotional whiplash. One moment, they make you feel cherished. The next, they make you feel unstable. This cycle is deliberate. It keeps you anchored in uncertainty, always reaching for the next validation, the next moment of peace. It's not chaos by accident, it's chaos by design. What's remarkable is that gaslighters often justify their behavior as helping. They'll say they're just trying to keep things calm, to stop the drama. But peace built on distortion isn't peace at all. It's quiet submission. And over time, that quiet becomes suffocating. If you've ever found yourself second-guessing your feelings, apologizing for existing, or replaying conversations just to check if you were crazy, remember this. Confusion is the first clue. Manipulators don't want you angry. They want you uncertain. Anger fights back. Uncertainty obeys. Gaslighting can make even the strongest minds crumble because it attacks not your intelligence, but your perception, your compass of truth. And once that compass spins, you'll do anything to steady it again, even if that means trusting the hand that broke it. But there's a way out. It begins with anchoring yourself in external reality. Write things down, record events, dates, words. Bring facts back into your life. Surround yourself with people who validate your experiences instead of rewriting them. Your truth doesn't need their permission to exist, because the moment you stop needing their version of reality, the moment you choose your own memory over their manipulation, the spell breaks. The fog clears, and you realize you were never crazy. You were being convinced to doubt your sanity by someone who was terrified of losing control. Next, we'll explore the next phase of manipulation, emotional dependency, where the gaslighter turns confusion into attachment, and your need for clarity becomes your need for them. Guilt tripping, the weapon of empathy. They make kindness a debt you can never repay. They twist your compassion into a chain, your empathy into a leash, And the more you care, the tighter it gets. Guilt tripping is one of the most subtle and yet most powerful weapons of manipulation because it doesn't attack your anger or your pride. It attacks your kindness. It turns your best trait, empathy, into your greatest weakness. Unlike gaslighting, which distorts your perception of truth, guilt, tripping distorts your sense of responsibility. It makes you feel accountable for someone else's emotions, as if their happiness, their stability, their peace all depend on you. A master manipulator doesn't need to raise their voice. They just need to sigh. They just need to look disappointed. They just need to say, "I thought you cared about me." And instantly the guilt floods in. It's a powerful psychological mechanism. Because humans are wired for connection, guilt evolved as a moral compass, a way for us to repair social bonds when we've done harm. But manipulators hack that system. They trigger guilt not when you've done something wrong, but when you've simply done something they didn't like. You cancel a planned arrest and they say, "Wow, I guess I'm not a priority anymore." You express a boundary and they respond, "After everything I've done for you?" Suddenly, what should have been self-care feels like betrayal. Guilt tripping thrives on the emotional reflex to fix, to soothe, to make things right. The manipulator doesn't have to demand anything explicitly. They let your empathy do the work. You start replaying the situation in your head, questioning yourself. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I should have just gone. Maybe I should have called. Maybe it is my fault. That internal dialogue is their victory. They've made you the judge and the defendant in a trial they scripted. There's a strange comfort to guilt, too, because guilt gives us the illusion of control. If we are the problem, then we can fix it. That's why guilt tripping is so effective. The manipulator knows that empathic people will always take responsibility first. They'll rush to apologize, to repair, to overextend, because they can't stand the idea of being the source of someone else's pain. But here's the truth. Not all pain you see is your fault, and not all guilt you feel is genuine. Guilt tripping often starts small. A friend you can never say no to. A partner who keeps reminding you of how much they have sacrificed. A family member who frames every disagreement as disappointment. The manipulator wraps their needs in moral language. If you really cared, you would. Or, "I just thought we were closer than that." They weaponize expectation. They plant seeds of obligation. Over time, your emotional landscape shifts from, "What do I want?" to, "What will they think of me if I don't?" And that shift, that quiet, invisible pivot, is where control begins. Psychologically, guilt tripping exploits what researchers call empathetic distress. This is the emotional discomfort we feel when someone else is upset, even if it's not our fault. Healthy empathy motivates compassion, but manipulative guilt hijacks that mechanism, turning it inward. Instead of thinking, "They're hurt, I want to support them," you think, "They're hurt, I caused this." And once that narrative takes hold, you start regulating their emotions instead of your own. It's emotional labor in disguise, and it's exhausting. The manipulator knows exactly how far to push. They'll never accuse you outright. They'll imply. They'll say things like, "I guess I just care more than you do," or, "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine." Somehow. These statements seem innocent, but they're loaded with expectation. You're left scrambling to prove your goodness, to erase the discomfort, to earn back emotional peace. But peace earned through guilt is never real peace. It's a transaction. For many empathic people, guilt tripping is especially dangerous because it plays into their deepest fear, the fear of being seen as selfish. We grow up taught that good people always help, always give, always forgive. Manipulators exploit that moral narrative. They create scenarios where saying no feels cruel, where prioritizing yourself feels like betrayal. They'll remind you of the times they were there for you, but never mention the price you paid for it. They keep emotional receipts, not for memory, but for leverage. And they always seem to know exactly which words cut the deepest. "I can't believe you'd say that to me after everything I've done. I thought I meant more to you." Wow, I didn't expect you to turn out like this. Every phrase is a scalpel, small, precise, and meant to cut just enough to make you bleed responsibility. When you live under chronic guilt tripping, something subtle happens to your sense of identity. You start to confuse kindness with compliance. You believe that love must always cost you something. You start measuring your worth in sacrifices. The more you give up, the better person you are. And that's exactly what the manipulator wants. Because a person who believes their value is tied to their guilt is a person who will never stop giving. But guilt tripping doesn't just create emotional exhaustion, it creates dependency. You start to need the manipulator's approval to feel morally clean. You seek forgiveness even when you've done nothing wrong. You become addicted to relief, that moment when they say, "It's okay, I forgive you." That's the emotional high that keeps you tethered. It's not love, it's absolution. The tragedy is that the more empathic you are, the more susceptible you become. Because your instinct is to heal, not to hurt. You assume everyone feels pain the way you do, honestly, openly, vulnerably. But manipulators don't seek healing, they seek control. And guilt is one of the most efficient ways to achieve it, because it disguises control as compassion. In relationships, this dynamic can be devastating. One person becomes the emotional caretaker, constantly apologizing, overcompensating, rescuing. The other becomes the silent judge, withholding affection until obedience is restored. Over time, the relationship stops being about connection and becomes a moral performance. You're not loved for who you are, you're rewarded for your compliance. But guilt tripping doesn't only exist in personal relationships. It happens in workplaces, friendships, even social systems. A manager might say, "I thought you were a team player," when you decline unpaid overtime. A friend might guilt you for spending time with others. A community might shame you for stepping outside its norms. Guilt becomes the social glue that keeps people submissive, the invisible thread that maintains power structures. Breaking that cycle starts with recognizing one truth. Guilt is a feeling, not a fact. Feeling guilty doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Empathic people must learn to separate moral responsibility from emotional manipulation. Ask yourself, am I being made to feel guilty for a boundary or for genuine harm? Am I apologizing to restore trust or just to stop someone from being upset? A manipulator counts on you not asking those questions. It takes courage to sit with guilt without immediately trying to erase it. It takes even more courage to let someone stay disappointed when you've done nothing wrong. But that's what freedom from emotional blackmail looks like. The willingness to let discomfort exist without surrendering your integrity. Remember this. Empathy is a gift, not a contract. True empathy uplifts both sides. It doesn't enslave one to soothe the other. You don't owe anyone endless forgiveness. You don't owe anyone constant sacrifice. You owe yourself honesty. And if someone uses your kindness as a weapon, that's not your failure. It's their manipulation. Because love that thrives only when you feel guilty isn't love at all. It's control wearing the mask of care. In the next segment, we'll explore another layer of this emotional architecture, the cycle of reward and withdrawal. How manipulators alternate warmth and coldness to train your emotions like a reflex until you no longer know whether you're acting out of love or fear. We've peeled back the layers from charm to guilt, from help that heals to help that holds you down. And if there's one truth that stands out, it's this. Manipulation doesn't always wear a mask of malice. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it calls itself love. Awareness is the first defense. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. So take a breath, reflect, and ask yourself, who really benefits from your kindness and who simply feeds on it? If something in this session made you think of a moment or a person, share it in the comments. Let's talk about it. Because the more we understand these patterns, the less power they have over us. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of control, trust, and self-awareness, you know what to do. Stay curious, stay awake, and I'll see you in the next one.